What's up, hobby friends? My name is Casey and welcome to another miniature rescue. This week, we're going to take a look at some gnarly goblins from Warhammer, Age of Sigmar. I've been collecting goblins for quite some time. Some of the earliest content on this channel was centered around buying used lots of them for insanely low prices right after the downfall of the old world. One specific memory I have was being at the hospital waiting for my son to be born, trying to keep myself sane while my wife was sleeping, and purchasing several lots of MoonClan Stabas and Shootas on eBay for well below prices we see even today. While my son was born, and simultaneously I had become the proud owner of many goblins. It was a good day. Since then I've purchased even more, and while I have painted quite a few of them, I still haven't used them in an actual Warhammer game. I don't really know why, I just haven't gotten around to it, I guess. Honestly, that feels pretty bad. I bought these models to do something with, and it's been almost 8 years. After all, having kids does make it a little harder to get in, a full game of Warhammer. But that's where this new thing comes in, Spearhead. The new smaller mode of play for Age of Sigmar, and it's been on my mind. The ability to use a smaller model count and still get the feeling of fielding a horde of goblins is exactly the kind of thing I need right now. One of the more exciting aspects of this game variant is the fact that everything is static. What I mean by that is what you get in a Spearhead or Vanguard box set, which is essentially a starter or taster for an army, is what you use for the entire army. The list of models doesn't change, which gives you more options than you actually think there are. I have goblins, and technically I do have enough of them painted up and ready to go, but I also have a lot more that need help. Some of them are older and not the ones that come in the Spearhead box, so I want to rescue those models, and some other models I have, in order to build my own Gloomspite army. Taking a look at the models I already have, we can see that the squig hoppers all need a little bit of work. For the most part, I think this is all contrast paint, but it's spotty and was applied pretty quickly. So I can soak these guys in my sonic cleaner for a bit, and that should get the paint off pretty easily. I do have models, like I said, already painted and ready to go, specifically the rock trolls and the little leader goblin on top of the mushrooms. What I mostly want to focus on are the night goblins. There are 20 of these guys in this army, and I have some older goblins that I want to swap out to make my army a bit more unique. I've been needing a really good excuse to use these models, and I think this is the perfect opportunity. So I'm going to go through some drawers and find the little baggie of goblins that I have. Turns out there are more than just goblins in here. There are in fact quite a few really cool older models that would be great to work on for the channel, but today is not that day. So I separate out all of the goblins and pieces of goblins and set the rest aside for later. Some of these are technically ready to go. The paint looks pretty good and the colors are nice and classic, but I want to get these onto new bases as well as clean up all the mold lines. A while back, I did a small cleanup on these models. Most of the brown was meant to be a new start for some yellow cloaks, but I didn't get around to it completely, and I didn't remove any of the mold lines for whatever reason. I know that the paint isn't very thick, certainly not enough to clog any details at least. Before getting to these though, let's take the other grots out of the sonic cleaner and give them a quick scrub to get that contrast paint off. After that, I need to get in there with an X-Acto knife and scrape away any excess sprue plastic and all of the mold lines. The cleanup process is pretty quick. The models get cleaned up and are looking pretty much ready for paint. The only issue with the goblins is that they're still on square bases. Now hear me out. I like a regimented horde of goblins on square bases just as much as anybody, but that's not the game we're playing, so they have to go. They just do. So the bases get cut away as the models get cleaned up, and they get put onto new round bases. Unfortunately, the glue was strong on these models, and as much as I tried, there was no saving these square bases. They weren't popping off. I had to cut them away. We must mourn for them, for they are gone, but they will not be forgotten. Many battles have they been underfoot, keeping these models grounded, close together, and perfectly regimented on their movement trays. The next thing to take care of will be getting some sand onto the bases for a nice bit of texture. The other models in the army have some muddy texture and tufts, but I'm thinking I want to cover most of that and get some more grass and tufts later on and keep these bright. So the sand will be just fine as a base. I start off the painting by covering them up with a thin layer of black primer and follow that up with a bright gray across the entire model. Most of the colors are going to be pretty bright, and I want to use mostly speed paints to get the base coating done. An optional, but quick, dry brush of pure white over that gray zenithal will pick out all the edges and make sure that the contrast layers look nice right out of the bottle. It's a good option for getting models on the table quickly and still looking their best, while also giving us room to improve the models later on. For paint, I'm going to get all of the models started with speed paints from the Army Painter. Getting a base coat on everything and getting these models on the table are the priority for me right now. Of course, I do want these to look good in the end, and speed paints won't be the only thing going down. But in terms of building an army and getting started, there really isn't a faster way to do that. It might not get the models looking the best they could right away, but everything base coated with basically a wash in the recesses helps tremendously when you want to come back and work on your models more and really make them look good. For strictly gaming models, I want them somewhere in the middle, not just base coated, but not going all in on the paint job either. Since we have a nice zenithal prime going and the white dry brush on all the edges, the speed paint going down will look pretty nice. The first color to go down will be some red on the inner parts of the shield. I'm going for a pretty strong red and yellow theme with these guys, and I want them to stand out from the eventual green grass that they're going to be standing on, along with red being the huge contrasting color for the green. I also want to use this color on the models with cloth to make those pieces bright and fun. I like my Moon Clan goblins to be a little dirty, a little grim and dangerous, but fun at the same time. Like, if this was a John Blanche painting of goblins, they would be grim dark green creatures, but frolicking in a flowery meadow kind of thing. Once the red is complete, I move on to the bright yellow cloaks. This particular yellow is called Ancient Honey, and it's from the Army Painter Speed Paints. It has some really nice properties. It definitely gives you a vibrant yellow over the bright white paint, but it also gives you warm yellow browns in the shadows. And that fits nicely with that narrative I've got going on here. Just a little dirty, but still really bright and fun. This particular goblin has a nice upgraded weapon as well. It's a metal part on a plastic model, and the arm has some extra bands on it. For now, I'm going to cover those pieces with a dark brown. This color will also be used for ropes and leather. Getting a dark brown on is a good start because any normal acrylic over the top will benefit from the darker layer, and I can use different browns to differentiate the types of materials, even for anything metallic. A darker color would just work better as a base coat. So this works for lots of things and should help get these models on the table sooner just because they're technically done. Everything will be base coated and still make sense. The last piece of the puzzle is the goblin skin. Specifically, I used Shamrock Green. It's a bright green that works really well for goblin skin, and the shading is pretty dark as well, so it helps separate out the little details and make it easier to layer over the skin with a regular acrylic paint. Finally, a dark metallic to cover the weapons and jewelry, and this model is technically ready for a game. Of course, I don't want to stop here right now, I'm having a good time. But it's important to talk about it. Getting models to this stage is totally fine. If you want to have painted models and play games, this is a great stopping point, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. But since I am enjoying it, I'm going to spend a little more time on these and do a couple of things that are pretty quick, but really make a difference to the overall look. First off, a layer of yellow-green on the skin. Using the speed paint as a guide, I'm just going to layer over all of the surface detail of that skin, leaving the recesses that darker green. This doesn't take too long, mostly because these are pretty small models, but like I said, it makes a huge difference right away and really helps these look better. Then I do the same thing, but with yellow. Although this feels more like a trust the process sort of step because I think there's just more flat, larger surfaces. As more of the model gets that layer of paint, the better it starts to look. It's just a stark difference in opacity right away, even with a yellow that isn't much different than the base coat. Part of the process I like for army painting, like this, is to be more painterly about it. Hard lines, dirty shadows, again, that frolicking Blanche look, and it just works for these models. And it looks painterly because the basic shapes and values are there, but it's not perfect, and it looks war-torn and lived in. The more time I put into painting and just getting color down rather than trying to be exact and precise with every brushstroke, the more I've enjoyed this specific process. It's light, it's fun, and it's pretty quick. It's the refining that gets you a better result after this, going back with other layers of color and smoothing things out. But up front, it can be messy, and you can actually have fun while you try new things and just push color around. Another thing you can do to push that quality without too much extra effort is by adding in some freehand. In this case, I want to do some easy lines and triangles on their cloaks. So I use some of that red as an accent color and just go for it. They don't have to be perfect, and with speed paints, the red pigment over that yellow has a really good coverage, so you can just lay it down in one coat. A couple of little extras, and these models are feeling pretty good. Now to finish up the bases and get the rest of the army to match. I start by getting some black on the base rims to just clean them up, and then get some PVA down on the top. On the grots, there really isn't a lot of room for grass tufts, so I place glue down in random areas to create little spots where those tufts could technically be, and sprinkle in some short static grass. I'm not using a static grass applicator or anything, so the grass won't stand up, but if you blow off the excess and kind of use your finger to push the grass up the rim toward the model, it does kind of stand up and it looks like they're in a grassy field. For the other models in the army with larger bases, I glue down some taller grass tufts and put PVA around those so that they're surrounded by that shorter grass. This just gives those larger bases a little more variety, but keeps everything looking like they belong together in the same unit or army. I should mention that the squig goblins here aren't the ones that I cleaned and prepped from the Sonic Cleaner. I had every intention of painting them, but the sweet older Moon Clan grots kind of became the project. I actually wanted to just do more work on them because they were fun. These are painted in the same way though, not really much different. I did basically the same things to get there, just at a different time. I do want to work on these more at some point and bring them up to the same level as the grots, but getting some grass tufts on there and matching them to the larger army already does make them a lot better. The point is, not everything goes the way you want it to, and if you're enjoying a set of models over another, that's fine. Just paint the things you want to, and you can come back to the other ones later on, which is kind of the point, even more so. I'm coming back to these after they've been sitting for a few years. These were painted for Warcry a good long while ago, and they did their job at the time, and now they get a little update and will be played in a Spearhead game. I've been meaning to get to these for a long time, and right now I'm just happy that 20 of these awesome models get to see the light of day and not sit in the drawer anymore. Someone else enjoyed these at one time, and now I get to enjoy them. And that's really what this is all about for me. I've been really enjoying working on these little armies over the last few weeks or so. Just something about a good game that uses a straightforward rule set that makes this hobby feel more accessible and has really helped to motivate me to getting things done that I'm not sure I would have gotten to, at least soon. I do plan on adding more and different models to these armies, and play even more games. There are tons of older models and proxies out there that would work perfectly for these units, and I can't wait to find the weirdest ones and save them from a life relegated to a plastic bag in a drawer. Until next time, thank you again for joining me on another miniature rescue. If you liked something about this video, please consider hitting that like button, sharing this video with your hobby friends, and subscribing for more miniature rescues. Once again, I'm Casey, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks again.